Welcome to Bench to Bedside, a weekly series of live conversations about recent advances in cancer, from the research bench to treatment at the patient's bedside. And now, your host and the director of the University of Kansas Cancer Center, Dr. Roy Jensen.
American Indians have the highest prevalence of cigarette smoking compared to all other groups in the United States. Chances of dying from tobacco-related causes is double that of other ethnic groups. Tobacco is considered a sacred plant by American Indian nations, and it's been used for centuries as a medicine, and it holds significant cultural importance. To help lower smoking rates and decrease the risk of cancer, researchers at the University of Kansas Cancer Center partnered with tribal communities to develop a unique smoking cessation program that respects tobacco as a sacred plant and promotes honoring it rather than abusing it recreationally. The program, called All Nations Breath of Life, is one of only a few such programs in the United States. Good morning. I'm Dr. Roy Jensen, director of the University of Kansas Cancer Center, and with me in the studio this morning is researcher Dr. Juan Choi. And in Studio B, we have researcher Jason Hale. Both of these folks specialize in developing culturally appropriate programs for American Indians. Also joining us is Michelle Simon, a member of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation located here in Kansas, and she's joining us via Skype. And finally, Megan Peters is here to take your questions. Well, welcome, Dr. Choi, and could you tell us about the program All Nations Breath of Life and how it's unique compared to other types of tobacco cessation programs?
Sure, so thank you. So All Nations Breath of Life was developed, implemented, and tested with the American Indian community as equal partners, the tribes here in Kansas, as well as Southern and Northern Plains. And we tested it for efficacy and effectiveness, and found that the cessation rates were twice the rate of non-tailored programs. The American Indians who participated in our studies come from both rural and reservation, as well as urban and suburban communities. And so as mentioned in your intro, it integrates and respects the traditional tobacco in the American Indian culture throughout the whole program.
Mm-hmm. So, Michelle, how did you initially become involved in All Nations Breath of Life?
I live on the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation Reservation, and this program became available, and I was a casual smoker, and I thought that it would benefit me, and so I took part in it as a participant, and then later afterward I was also a facilitator and ran a group of my own.
Okay. So how did that work in your role as a facilitator in the program? How did you accomplish that?
As a facilitator, I reached out to people in the community, and we had a group that was put together, and then I used the information and tools that AMBL has, and met with the group and assisted them and did all of the components of the program. And we did have a couple people that were successful at quitting smoking.
Okay. And I understand that your role has really evolved over time. Could you tell us about kind of your progression through the program?
Well, we've had it here on our reservation, and then it kind of, we didn't have anybody to run it, and so the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation has been looking at how we can assist our employees for those that may want to stop smoking, and so recently we've brought this program back into our workplace. And so we are starting to reissue it again now.
So it sounds like forming close partnerships is really foundational to a lot of the work that you do in this program. And of course, in the research world, we call this community-based participatory research. And I want to bring Jason in now to explore this further. Jason, why use this particular research approach when working with American Indian nations?
Well, CBPR is often mandated by tribal communities due to years of documented unethical medical practice and research done to American Indians. There's a huge mistrust of the mainstream medical establishment. So CBPR allows us to go in and establish relationships and sort of rebuild that trust with health practice and research. So it also allows us to, with community buy-in, if community members are involved from the beginning, there's more of a chance that their health problems that the community identifies are being looked at, and they're also able to offer strategies and input for research, for interventions that are being developed. So the community knows that if it's coming from community members, there's more likely to be buy-in and more likely to participate in the research.
Mm-hmm. So do you also then partner with the Indian Health Services as well to move this program forward?
We partner with the people who work with IHS. IHS has a ton of sort of limits to what can be done, so that there's a lot of IRBs that should be done. But so we sometimes do. It just depends on the actual tribe. Some tribes have their own IRBs. Some tribes utilize the Indian Health Services to sort of safeguard those communities. So yeah, we would definitely work with Indian Health Service when the opportunity arises to do so.
Thanks. So if you're just joining us, we're here with Dr. Juan Choi, Jason Hale, and Michelle Simon, talking about how they work together to develop culturally appropriate, community-based interventions to support healthy behaviors in American Indian nations. And Megan Peters is here via Skype taking your questions. And remember to share this link with people you think might benefit from our discussion. Use the hashtag #BenchToBedside. So one of our charges as an NCI-designated cancer center is to reduce the unequal burden of cancer in communities. And so Dr. Choi, how do programs like All Nations Breath of Life support this mission specifically?
So because we've tested and shown the efficacy of the All Nations Breath of Life in successfully getting American Indians to quit smoking, it not only reduces the cancer burden, as you mentioned earlier, lung cancer is the leading cancer deaths among American Indians. But more importantly, because American Indians have a higher smoking rate, by getting them to quit, you are reducing health disparities related to not only lung cancer, but all smoking attributable cancers due to cigarette smoking.
So, Megan, it sounds like we have our first question.
We do. The first question is, you mentioned that tobacco is considered a sacred plant by some tribes. How is it used in that way?
Michelle, do you want to tackle that question?
I think Jason is best equipped to talk about that.
So, yeah, tobacco has traditionally been used in ceremonies as prayer. It's also used as a gift. So what has kind of happened with the more acceptance and wider use of commercial cigarettes and pipe tobacco in traditional ceremonies, there's been this sort of shift to a sort of misguided belief that cigarette smoking is in fact a part of the culture or a part of that ceremony, and has led to sort of a more wider acceptance in the general community, Native communities, than it is in others.
I see. So obviously, we can hardly conduct a bench to bedside episode without touching on COVID. And that topic is particularly relevant in the American Indian community as the COVID-19 pandemic has hit a number of American Indian nations extraordinarily hard. How would you say that your community, the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, done during COVID? Michelle?
I think we've done fairly well. Our community has really banded together and shown our strength in ensuring that the majority of community members are participating in wearing masks and upholding all of the health guidelines that have been issued by the various levels like the CDC, and even following some of the state mandates, and also dealing with what our tribal council has directed for the reservation specifically. One thing that our tribe did that was really beneficial for our community was we had shut down our casino in order to try and stay safe and not spread COVID-19. And during that time, we transitioned our casino into a commissary, which allowed individuals to be able to purchase their standard foods and things that you might need, which allowed them to not have to go into town, and lowered their potential risk of catching COVID, because we had our own commissary on the reservation. Ultimately, it did so well that we were able to open that up to not only our own tribal members, but also to the other tribes that are in Kansas that are up the road from us. So we were able to invite the Kickapoo tribe in Sac and Fox in Iowa to also make use of that resource to help their communities not get COVID.
Well, that's a great use of community resources there. We're approaching the end of today's episode. Dr. Choi and Jason and Michelle, what are some of the key takeaways you'd like for our audience to take with them this morning?
So I'd like to take this opportunity to promote two current studies that are still ongoing to help American Indians quit smoking and adapting to the COVID. My colleague, Dr. Daly, is leading that, but we are a site for it. And one of them is offering AMBL through the telephone. So individually, in your home, you can still quit smoking and enroll in this study through the telephone. And Jason Hale is probably the best person to get in touch with that.
Jason?
Yeah, we're implementing AMBL in Prairie Band Potawatomi, and also TAMBL, the telephone-based version, will be available nationwide for American Indians. It's a program that we are really confident and have a lot of, we're confident in the program, and we're really happy that we're able to offer it and in these different, deliver it in different ways to reach, a greater amount of people.
All right. So, Michelle, you get the last question. What helpful advice or tips would you have that you learned from All Nations Breath of Life that might help smokers interested in quitting?
You can quit at any time. Like, it doesn't matter if you're young, if you're old, if you smoke casually, if you've been smoking a pack a day since you can remember. Anybody can quit, and the AMBL program has tools and is tailored to make your change successful. And I really suggest it to anyone that is looking to stop smoking.
Excellent. So, Dr. Choi, Jason, and Michelle, thank you so much for being part of this week's episode of Bench to Bedside. And as always, thank you, Megan. To learn more about the Cancer Center's efforts working with diverse communities in our catchment area, visit kucancercenter.org/community. That's it for today. Join us next week at 10 a.m. for Bench to Bedside. Thanks.